Hello and welcome. My name is Andy Salkeld, and this is going to be my army showcase, the Spooky Sisters, which was affectionately named by the Tabletop Titans Sisters Discord. But essentially, a lot of people have talked about my army, given me nice compliments about it, said they like the colours, they like the theme, the lore, whatever about it, and it felt kind of like I should put something together to put it on show. Various photos of them have cropped up around the place. People have come to see me at tournaments I've been to and said, I've heard about these. They're the Spooky Sisters and so on. And I just thought I'd put something together, mostly because it's Halloween. And it felt appropriate, but also to just give something people can refer to if they ever want to see the army or share it around to other people, to just give them an idea of where it is. And that's broadly what this is going to be. I'm going to go through a kind of a PowerPoint presentation with some videos and just talk about the pictures that are on screen, talk about kind of the background to what was happening at the time, what my thought process was, and how it all kind of came together. If people are interested, I can tell them like paint schemes and stuff like that. I am a terrible hobbyist and terrible kind of photo. My art direction is very poor. So I just thought I would put all this together in the way I know how, which is kind of a really bad business presentation. And if people like it and things like this take off, then I can look at doing it better in the future. But with that being said, let's kind of just talk about the background of the army. So you're going to see me looking off to the side because I need to do the slides and everything like that. So here we go. So this is where it all started. And I think it's important to kind of set a bit of context to where I was in my life when I was doing this. Like many, this was kind of born out of COVID-19 and the pandemic that kind of across the world and caused a lot of people to lose an awful lot in their life. And I will never say I was one of the worst sufferers, but I did lose a lot. I lost my home. I had to move back in with my parents. I lost my work. My book launch failed. Well, it didn't fail, but it just, everything was worse than it could have been. And I felt I had lost a lot of my life, and this was on the back of also a year or two prior losing my wife, losing my house, and everything that had gone with that. So this had been a very tough few years for me in a row. And then we had COVID, and that was another tough few years. And when we were locked down, like many, I got back into Warhammer alongside many of my friends and stuff like that. And I had just started on Space Marines because it was easy to do, and you could play them as anything. It kind of gave you variation and stuff like that. So I kind of built out like it's probably about 5,000 to 7,000 point Space Marine army in this time. All painted very poorly, no doubt. And that's not really worth the showcase. But I'd always knew I wanted to do another faction. And there's been a long-running joke amongst my friends where it that dials back to kind of Quake and Doom, where I have always played female characters in video games, and that's because back then female characters had smaller hitboxes, similar to how people who played Oddjob in GoldenEye. And I had just always done this because it was the most gamey thing. It was the most effective, most efficient. It made you harder to hit, etc., etc. Smaller head hitboxes, so it was harder to headshot you, things like that. And I just kind of always done that, and so this joke has gone on for many, many years. It still goes on now, and knowing about the Sisters of Battle faction, I was like, I'm going to do this at some point. And the book got announced. I think it came out in May. It was after AdMech. which was a shock in itself. But what terrified me about doing Sisters from where I were, hello Pika, what terrified me about Sisters was I am not a confident painter. I think I paint poorly, and I didn't want to paint faces. I was terrified of painting flesh, faces, anything like that. And Sisters are like a lot of them have faces. They have the typical hairstyle, stuff like that. And I was like, I'm just going to do it so badly, and I'm going to be really embarrassed about it. I mean, I have still done the army really badly, and I'm really embarrassed about it. But at the same point, I didn't want to do that. So I was thinking, I didn't really want to just do helmets, which is the easy way to do it. I wanted to do something a little bit different. And I realised they had robes on, and I was like, well, what if I just did an empty hood? Because I don't have to do a face, and it kind of fits in with all the robes and garments they wear, and it'll give this kind of death feel to the army. And so I kind of followed that, and this was the very first model I painted. This was kind of where where's my mouse? There we go. This was the very first model I painted. So I was going, and I shared it round the Tabletop Titans Discord. And immediately it kind of took on a life of its own. People loved the theme. They thought it was, the kind of the death aspect they'd not really seen before, I don't think. We went through a bit of debate on colour scheme, but ultimately I wanted it to be very straightforward. I didn't want to do a huge amount of detail. So I just settled, and I wanted them to look like their kind of everything was old. Hence, it looks very dishevelled, it looks very kind of worn down, and everything kind of just basic metallics. The robes have the colour, and then it's just black armour, and so on. And it kind of just got on this, it kind of grew from there. And the reason I talked about what happened in my life prior is because of how important that community aspect of the TTT Discord and everything like that was at that time in my life. And it has made a huge difference to me as an individual who has lived with anxiety and depression for many years. Having that community that I can go back to and I can share my weird and wonderful things with, even though they're not always Sisters related now, it is my home. It is my kind of home channel. People just know me as Andy, which is just kind of a nice thing. And it was incredibly welcoming by all the people there. I'm not going to name names because I don't want to call anyone out, but you know who you are, all the people on those Discords that have engaged with me. And I cannot thank you enough in kind of how much your support and encouragement kind of meant for me when I was going through this project. But anyway, this is where it started. So now let's go through some of the other things. None of this is planned. There's no script. There's no pre-recording, nothing like that. It's all literally, I'm just going to say it as it goes. But it all started with 1 mini, and this is where it was. So next, obviously, I filled out the Battle Sister squad. What you'll see on these slides is I've kind of done one in situ with kind of backgrounds of other models that have been around as I was taking these photos, and then one which is the kind of the glam cam shot. For some of the models I don't have glam cam, for others I do. But yeah, this was just the Battle Sister squad. It got fleshed out. The pink flock I added later because what I felt with the colouring was it was kind of drab, which was intended, but I essentially wanted the crystals. You'll see on the back of one of these bases a little candle with a green flame on. The green became kind of the ghostly theme. You can look in the back of this and you can see the the Battle Sanctum is kind of an underglow effect. And I wanted that to be like a sharp accent against the very dark colours. And also with the white as the base, it kind of gave that really high contrast on the models. All the 3D hoods, all the hoods have been 3D printed, and similar with the chain scythe heads, all 3D printed. Good friend of mine did it. I wanted this to be kind of... One of the things I've always found in 40k is people rarely show the actual violence and gore that you would imagine takes place in these settings. So I wanted to make sure I actually did blood effects, and used blood for the blood god on a lot of places. It did tone down a lot when I put on a matte varnish, but it kind of works across the entire army, and you'll see on later models that I wanted to kind of use these colours even where they shouldn't exist to just tie things together. So I finished off the Battle Sister squad, and then I wanted to do something special, because one of the things I've always believed in is if you do a really good job on your characters, you want to play with them more. So I wanted to do my Canoness. So I did this Canoness. I believe I painted this on my youngest brother's 30th birthday, before we went to an outdoor social event during COVID. And yeah, awkward time. It was one of those like where you have to be separated, but it was his 30th birthday. I believe we were outside lockdown. But I can't remember the details. I think we were in the summer where they allowed you to have outside events. Can't exactly remember. But either way, I painted this, and one of the cool things I found about converting these is Sisters models are incredibly dynamic, where you can actually cut off some of the plastic very cleanly, and go... Like in this case, I believe I went from the brazier straight into the scythe head, and it just works. And if you put in like enough mess around it with some snow, with some purity seals, you'll see this. I use this a lot later to hide the mess. It works very cleanly, and you can't really tell the difference. So I really enjoyed doing this, and I was like, right, I am firmly doing Sisters through and through. So I then expanded it. My natural place is to go to Retributors, and this is where I started adding more of the green, which is kind of moot green, and then I think it's Tesseract Glow. And I did this across all things, whether it's Melter or Flamer. Originally, I was going to have different colours for each, but I figured that could draw people's eyes in the wrong direction. I wanted a consistent image across it. So you'll see all my melters and all my flamers have the same kind of glow around the front. You'll also notice in the image on the right that I have converted heavy bolters and heavy flamers into multi-melters, so that I can have the maximum number of multi-melters possible to field, which I think we did the maths quite recently, where you could have 6 Argent Shroud Battle Sister squads with 1 multi-melter in each, and then 3 squads of 4 multi-melters on your infantry, and then you could even have immolators to carry them. I haven't finished my immolator yet, but you'll see what the chassis has been used for later as well. I made sure to do a couple of sergeants with combi flamers and pistol holsters, just to make sure that if I wanted to run Holy Trinity, I could. But they have kind of sat on the back burner for now. I haven't found it necessary for a while. I then went on to do some Seraphim. And again, very simple paint scheme here. and I made sure to just add a little bit of colour on the backpacks to show kind of the exhausts. Hand flamers have the flame colouring as always, just because it makes it easier to pick them out when on the tabletop. If I did this again, I would maybe do some of the smoke trail 3D printing. However, I was reliant on a friend to do 3D printing for me before, so I just used the GW flying stands. They work absolutely fine for this, but I do kind of like the resin printed vapor trails, which are very cool, but I'm kind of happy with these now, and I wouldn't want to change the army because of that. And after the Seraphim, I was like, I'm going to do another character. And I decided to do the Dogmata. She was everywhere in every Sisters list that was competitive, and I was just like, okay, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do something interesting? And my idea was essentially, I'm just going to do a double-headed scythe. I have no idea how this would work or how someone would wield it, but given the way she holds the standard mace, I believe, I was like, this can work. I'm just going to put a scythe head on each end, and we'll kind of leave it at that. Stands out brilliantly on the tabletop, which is an important factor I'm finding now as I play more, just being able to say, there's a Dogmata, can't miss her because she's got a lot of bloody scythes on her, and picking out other characters. So when we get to the Hospitaller, you'll see she has a lot of green on her base. It just makes it very easy to pick them out on the tabletop, knowing where they are. This was fun to do. I think there was a few people on various Discords that were like, this is an incredible idea, I love it. I have no idea how it would work, but I love it. So I was pleased with how this one came out. Again, with the Seraphim, I wanted to do the Zephyrim. At this point, I was doing a big push to get 2,000 points ready to play at Warhammer World. My group of friends, we all play Warhammer. We all got into it during COVID, and this was during the summer where you could go out during COVID, and Warhammer World was open, allowing you to play but socially distanced, masks, etc. And I was like, we had it set for months, and I was like, I am going to get my army at least functional and playable, given how much effort I've put into it. So I was pushing very hard to get my Zephyrim done. This was the first squad that I did. There is a second squad that you'll see later on. And the way I differentiate them, given most Battle Sisters kind of look the same, is this unit has the pink flock and the other one has blood dripped on their bases. It allows me to tell pink or red on the tabletop. I am always a functional player. I'm a player first and hobbyist second, if that makes sense. So I will try to just push to make it easier to play. Obviously, one of the most important things when we very first started with the Codex was everyone realised how good Sacrosancts were. And they were, and still are, incredible. They're just kind of the third melee option unit in Sisters, behind Repentia and Zephyrim. But because of the bodyguard shenanigans at the time, it was very much we need to get Sacrosancts done. So I got 10 done. At the time, I only ran a unit of either 5 or 9 just to do the bodyguard stuff. And they were a pain to do. One of the things I learned from painting Vanguard veterans for my Space Marines was that painting shields was a nightmare, because if you had them glued to the model, you couldn't get behind them, and then you could end up with partly unpainted models. So I sub-assembled these. One of the things I wanted to make them just stand out a bit. Obviously, the shields do that. The way I made them differentiate was I used, is it Grey Knight steel? The kind of blue tinge steel for a lot of their equipments, and that's what I used for kind of the Celestian side of the Sisters Army. It's really subtle, you probably won't notice it. But anything that's Celestian or kind of in the hierarchy of the order will have some form of Grey Knight steel muted blue in there. One of the things that people really loved about these when I showed them was they thought the tiny green connector between the halberd head and the power pack was just a really nice spot color that just stopped it being entirely muted across the model. So again, I rushed to get 10 done. Then later on, I finally got the other 10 done. I still haven't gone to 30 sacrosancts. I was not on that bandwagon. I was very much I'm happy in Bloody Rose and I'm just going to murder people. So I still haven't gone to 30, but it's on the cards. But I think we see how the data slates play out, etc. And then we get to my first big conversion project. This is the Repentia Superior, which is obviously the start of, well, what am I Repentia going to be? Because if I don't want to paint flesh or faces, how am I going to do Repentia when that is their entire model? So I decided I was going to kit bash. And what I did was I took the... given everything had come across with a ghostly death look, I immediately went and looked within Nighthaunt to see if there was anything that could work there. And what I ended up doing was I used Bladegeist Revenants. And I figured, okay, well, whatever happened to cause my order, which has now been named the Order of the Wilted Rose, whatever had happened to them, to cause them to reanimate, be repurposed, whatever you want to call. I don't know. I haven't made up lore. What if they weren't wearing armor at the time? Well, maybe it's the robes that are animated, and if that's the case, the kind of ghostly effect of using the same robe color as the Nighthaunt kind of robe color would work really well. And you can kind of imagine, well, if you took the kind of armor off the chests and the legs, if there were no legs left or chest left, this might be what they could look like. Obviously, we ended up with a couple of strange bits on this. How was I going to paint the arms? And I figured I was just going to go up, kind of hit the ghostly feel and use the spot color of the green for the arms, as in if they were actually kind of energy or something like that. But I was left with the faces on them, and because of the way some of the models work, it felt that I had to leave the masks in there. I think if I hadn't left the metallic masks in, it would have looked... there's various bits behind them that just don't... that just look off. So I stuck with them, and they're just bits of armor. So I took that, the Bladegeist Revenant kit, and a Repentia kit. Now here's the really cool thing. The Repentia kit actually comes with, I believe it's 19 Penitent Eviscerators, which meant I could buy one of those kits, get a couple of bits from a bits website, and 2 boxes of Revenants, and it's only 3 kits to make one to make 20 Repentia. I still haven't gone above 20 Repentia because this is a hell of a task to do, because you end up cutting the Bladegeist Revenant swords at the hilt, and then you have these really tiny places to actually glue them together. You'll see what I also used on many of these is I added other bits of extra from the Repentia kit. So this is where they have some of the purity seals and other decoration. I added some extra chainswords in to just kind of make them look even more violent than they are, and just to kind of dial them up a little bit beyond. The thing that was really tricky about these is these kits for Sigmar, I believe, are on, I want to say they're on 32s, but I have a horrible feeling that they're on 40s. And Repentia are on much smaller bases. I believe they're 28.5s. And therefore you end up in this kind of like this, you've taken this kit that's designed to balance on a much bigger base because it wobbles a lot, and they're very fragile, and you're putting it on this tiny base. And it makes kind of positioning and gluing them very important to get right so that the center of mass is on top, so they're not constantly topsy-turvy. One thing I will say, as proud as I am of this conversion and this kit and what I did with these, they are a nightmare to play with. There are so many swords and chains and arms and everything just flying all over that when you kind of place them on the tabletop, they just get stuck within one another, and you're constantly trying to pull the models apart with everything sticking together. But they have served me very well, and as much as they are awkward to play with, they are one of the best units in the Codex by far, and they will be in every, at least Bloody Rose army that I do, until if we ever get horrendously nerfed on them or something like that. And then I was, at the time, it was characters, and this is where I did my first Celestine. And yes, I said first because there is another one later. And again, I wanted to do something a bit different. So I made sure that the two Gemini had power scythes to just make things a little bit more deathly. And I can't remember where I saw the conversion first. I think it was probably on Tabletop Titans, and I believe I saw them use a Sanguinor that had used these wings from Stormcast Eternals. And I was like, I love those wings. I think those wings are awesome, and I think having them as bright green would just look incredible. But I couldn't just have one set of wings. No, we had to go for two for the full-on kind of... again, it was someone from TTT said full-on anime vibes from this. It wasn't my intention, but that is exactly what it looks like, with kind of the mechanized wings and so on. And I thoroughly enjoyed painting this. The support parchment is a nightmare to work with. Celestine wobbles around so much, but still she stays balanced. I was concerned that by adding additional weight, it may not be supported anymore, but it still works and it looks fine. And I put a lot of effort into getting this right and to create that kind of Dark Angel vibe. Not Dark Angels, but the kind of who was it? Said it's Diablo 3 vibes. I can't remember the names of them. But yeah, that was the theme I was going for. Again, you'll see I used some of the Grey Knight Steel here, just to kind of emphasize high up in the sisterhood. And with Celestine, obviously just back, you'll see that actually the back is an absolute mess of trying to cover up the fact that everything failed when I was sticking it together. And this is one of the great things about doing cool conversions on a tabletop, is people don't realize how much mess and how much mistake there actually is on models, and there is a lot on mine. But yeah, this was a cool model, and very fun to work on. But there is another, and yeah, I needed to get a rhino done, and this was pretty fun to do actually. I'd never done a vehicle since I went back to 40k. I wanted to have, again, I'm a big stickler for trying to keep all the colours consistent across the army. I couldn't think of a good way to include the green, so I just used it as the lights. I thought it'd be really subtle lights, but I'll have purple on the symbology, because then it ties it together. It's obvious this goes with my army. Doing the snow on this was tricky, but I thought, you know what, I'm just going to layer it around the bits where it could build up so that it doesn't overshadow the fact, like, it shows that it's part of the army, but that it's not just snow everywhere. Another character that I was working on at the time, we hadn't got into the stage of rezzing Retributors, but this is another one of my quick tabletop looks where I wanted to have something that showed what was kind of going on with the sisters within my army. I still haven't figured out whether this is the Hospitaller extracting the ghost from the body or putting the ghost into the body, but it's one of those things. This is the OG faceless sister. If you someone said this to me on the Discords, and was very much like, your entire army is basically the Hospitaller but without the face put on. And at the time I had never used the Hospitaller, but it is ever so true. Like, this model can be built without the face and it just works. And so it's kind of extending that across the army. I spent a fair bit of time trying to get the colours across the robes to work. You can see it more in the glam cam shot than in the kind of the live action shot. I also wanted to emphasize the kind of the apothecary side, which is why the parchment for the doves in this is more white than the kind of the parchment elsewhere in the army, which is kind of the colour that's in the books. So just a few little things about that one. The best 22 points a Sisters player will ever spend. I was not a fan of the Crusader model. I didn't think I was not a fan of it. I didn't think it'd be coherent across the army. So I wanted to do something. I wanted to make some Crusaders out of Battle Sisters. I mean, these are Zephyrim or Seraphim models that I just posed using the spare Sacrosanct shields that come with the Sacrosanct kit. Because you get 6, one's the superior shield, so I just used the other ones here to give them the power sword and shield vibe. And then I just put fancy backpacks on them. And I kind of picked the spare models to be to almost give a bit of a diorama in effect, as in, and you can see this in the kind of live action, the normal shot, not the glam cam, where one of them is thrusting the sword forward and the other is dodging back in response. And this was a really straightforward project. I love this unit because it just does all the nonsense in games that no one ever wants to do. And it does it like a champ, so cheap. And then we have the final bit of the time. This was an amazingly fun build, an amazingly fun paint, and I'm still proud of it, and people always comment. So with Morven Val, I knew I was doing Nighthaunt, and I was like, how am I going to give Morven Val a massive scythe? What is going to work with that? And like, yes, this doesn't work quite perfectly, but to say I was only 1 year into the hobby at the time, my ability to convert was limited by my experience. So whilst this hasn't come out the best, I'm still pleased with where I was in my hobby journey. And the way I figured out I was going to do it was I was going to use the Nighthaunt Endless spell. And I can't remember what it's called. Is it Shaiish Reaper? It might be something else. But either way, so I bought the Endless spell kit, and I was like, I'm going to use that blade there. I'm going to use the flames that were part of the rest of the scythe, which is obviously too big for her to hold. And I'm going to use those flames to be as if it's kind of ghostly flames rising from her body. And then I was like, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm also going to use the Mortalis Terminexus as a bit of decoration on the base. And that's kind of the what is it? The egg timer. I can't even remember what it's called now. Yeah, this is embarrassing. But yeah, so I started working all this together. I was really pleased with how it came out. It took a fair bit of work to figure out how everything was done. I sub-assembled all the flames off the model. I sub-assembled the scythe off it. I believe I've also got a back shot, just so that you can see the rest of it. She again has candles on her base that fit in. I tried to put the snow round in the tracks so that you could just see how everything fits together. And I believe this was kind of where I got to in what was the initial army I built, which was loosely linked to, I believe at the time it was John Lennon's, his was Eben Chalice and Bloody Rose. I later moved on to Argent Shroud Bloody Rose, just because I loved multi-melters and having them yeet up the board out of a rhino. At the time, that's been changed and fixed. But yeah, yeet up the board out of a rhino and delete something just felt incredible. But yeah, this was the, I would say, the end of phase 1 of my army, where I had got all the stuff I needed to play, all the cool models. It was kind of all cinematically built. And then I was like, okay, now I need to double up on everything to be able to expand the army and have different options of play. And that's kind of the bit we go through next. So one of the next editions, when it came out, was Novitiates. And when Novitiates were released, they were originally in, I believe it's the Chalnath box. And which was an expensive way to buy 10 models. And I was not a fan of that. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to buy that, so how can I fix it? So I went back to my beloved Nighthaunt. And one of the great things about Nighthaunt is, I believe during 2nd edition of Age of Sigmar, I believe during 2nd edition, Nighthaunt were in one of those, monthly subscription kind of kits where basically you got sent a magazine with stuff and a kit in it. So there is a lot of second-hand Nighthaunt on the market because there was a lot of those made. And obviously they're smaller. They're less armored battle sisters. They don't wear power armor. Well, one of them does, and they don't. So I wanted to do something small, and I wanted them to be basically chaff and expendable. And so I went for, I believe they're called Chain Rasps. Chain Rasp Horde, that's it. And again, I went to 3D printing to get some swords printed because I only wanted the melee version. And again, friend happy to print me out some swords. So I just went about converting. Again, problem with these, as opposed to the Bladegeist Revenants, is they don't just have the armor mask, they actually have in their skeletal, they have other parts to their body. So I had to do kind of faces and jaws and things like that, which again I was happy to do because I'd already figured out how to do the ghost effect, and then I just dialed it up with blood across the metallics. And yeah, this was I was painting 20 of these, and batch painting 20 is a pain, and it makes you absolutely hate batch painting. But it was a fantastic thing to do, and for a time I was running 2 units of novitiates, but now I typically just run 1. Really pleased with how they came out. One of the things I'm always careful of with this army is explaining to people, these are novitiates, the bigger ones with the bigger chainswords are repentia, and making sure people are aware of the difference, because they can all look the same. So it's just making sure that you're clear with that and clear on everything of how it fits together. And then Cassandra, the wonderful castigator. This was a great addition. I wasn't convinced on it initially, but when I started earlier on this year, 2022, I went to I was going to the Goonhammer Open in May. I'm actually recording this when the October Goonhammer Open is, which I'm not at. I have other plans and so on. And this was something that I wanted to add because it was part of a lot of successful competitive lists, particularly if you were running 2x20 Retributors. And I'd been testing lots of other things, and then Armor of Contempt came out. And with that, there was the indirect nerf, and Custodes could only turn off your rerolls once per game. And suddenly it was like, right, we're doing this. We can actually build a really strong, really competitive army. And this was such a good addition. I painted it very lazily because I had to do it in basically one weekend. And I painted this, I painted the Castigator, a second Rhino, and a second Rhino and an Immolator hull, not an Immolator. You'll see that later on. All in a weekend. By this point, I'd got an airbrush, so it was a lot faster to do things. It's why you'll see that there is some cheeky OSL coming from the flames. Again, this was one of the pieces that was very hard to add the purple onto. There's only a few bits of spot purple, so you'll see it on top of the turret, and it's actually also on the back. There's a kind of mural on the back. So that's why I kind of added the purple on these. It works fine in the army, and it has served me incredibly well. And then I started refreshing my characters. And this is the model I'm most proud of in my sister's army. This is the model, it's not even that fancy, but it's the model I spent the most time on delicately and diligently converting it and making sure everything worked. This is a second canoness who has every weapon possible equipped. You'll see she has a Sacrosanct Spear, a Penitent Eviscerator. The hilt of the Penitent Eviscerator is a mace head, and she has a power sword underneath her cloak. On the back of her, there is a cherub carrying a Sacrosanct shield. And I put a lot of effort into this. It's a conversion from Greyfax, and I did so much work to get all of these pieces to fit together that I'm just I'm really pleased, and this has been my canoness of choice, taking to events to go murder people and make them fight last and turn off their invulns. So this is just part of my character refresh that I did, and yeah, absolutely love this model. I put a lot of effort into her. Then we have the Palatine that I did at the same time. So again, in practice for the Goonhammer Open, what I was trying out was, because Custodes turned off rerolls, one of the things I was trying was the Mina's Wrath, Righteous Repugnant, Righteous Rage Palatine alongside, which sounds strange when I say turns off rerolls, but basically, because there was so much indirect, I needed 3 rhinos, and because Val rerolls were at a premium, it was almost worth just not taking her to just have murder characters instead, and then MSU everything else to just score. And this was a character I needed to be able to try that. So this is just a Battle Sister body that I added on a fancy backpack from Sacrosanct and a Zephyrim arm to give a nice looking sword, etc. Nothing special about it, but it was just part of the character refresh that I was doing. And then I made a second Celestine. So with the first Celestine, I used the different wings, and in my sister's bits box, I just had 2 Celestine wings left that were just sat there staring at me, being like, you should do something with me. And at the time, we were starting to play Crusade, and I was trying to dial back my competitive nature to then add in, to do a bit of storytelling. So I was like, okay, the Order of the Wilted Rose, my order. The canoness that was alive was obviously in awe of Celestine in life. But as in anything with stories, what if in death this awe turned into jealousy and turned into kind of almost obsession, trying to become them, and so on. So my Crusade storyline was largely about a character that wanted to be Celestine. And so I would use my canoness to begin with, and then the way she tried to become Celestine was to run in and die every single game. And I played it like that. She had a group of Sacrosancts as her support, because she didn't have her own Gemini and things like that, and just ran in and tried to die. And then that was kind of the lore behind it. And I wanted a ridiculous character to kind of stand out like this, and that's why it doesn't have wings, just has a seraphim jump pack with the wings attached to it, and cherubs that are actually helping her fly, because not the same. And this has, again, so many bits in it. The sword is the spare sword that comes from the Paragon Warsuit kit, and it's set up as if it's a double-handed sword. The cherubs come from the standard cherub kit. The backpack is from the Seraphim kit. The base is built from one of the Nighthaunt Endless spells, with 2 of the Zephyrim Pennant braziers, and the Simulacrum from the Battle Sisters as kind of decoration. What you'll also see on this is, and there's a melter pistol. But what you'll also see on this is there's a lot of purity seals, and I use purity seals to hide bad joins or things that look a mess, which is very clear on the back, because that's what I did with the purity seals on the wings. And they just hide a really awkward join at the top. And just whenever you look at my models, if you see a load of purity seals, it is there to hide something. So feel free to go looking. There's often something horrendous underneath it. And that was a refresh of Celestine. This was my immolator hull that I turned into a that again I didn't want to buy 2 kits, and I was terrified of painting the organ for the Exorcist. So I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to 3D print a top missile launcher. I'd seen this top missile launcher used, and I just wanted to add in a little bit of extra stuff to make it an immolator. Not an immolator, sorry. Use the immolator hull and turn it into a an Exorcist. But also, I can pop out the missile launcher and put on a kind of an opening door, and then it's my 3rd Rhino as well. And I'm all for efficiency, where I paint one model in a few bits and suddenly it's like 3 or 4 different models. I have started work on the immolator turret. Hello, Pika. But I haven't finished that yet. So it's just, again, cheeky bit of OSL with the braziers. I wanted to use again. I wanted to add some purple, so the missiles were purple in this. But again, really happy to use this. Really happy to have 3 rhinos. And at some point, I will start doing some more vehicles should they become competitive again. And then I started just adding random nonsense. I wanted to add an Inquisitor in case I ever wanted to take a Psyker. One of the things when I believe it was Nephilim dropped it was when Nachman dropped. The secondaries were awkward, and Sisters were not in the best position to build to the last in. Yes, you could with an Exorcist, a Val, and Celestine, or something like that, hence building an Exorcist. You could take a Psychic secondary through Interrogation or Warp Ritual, and hence I wanted to make sure I had a Inquisitor built. This one was Kyria Draxus. And again, I just added little bits to kind of make it more Sisters. Kyria wears a robe, hence I could get away with the purple hood. And I wanted to add the Sororitas symbol. And stop it, girl. You want to come up here? Come on, darling. Okay. It's lunchtime. She wants to have her lunch. Just got to be patient, love. And yeah, so I just started adding bits. This is my Inquisitor. Right, hold on. Come here. Here you go, on camera. So yeah, added Kyria in, which was a nice addition. At the time, Grey Knights were an absolute menace. And I was like, well, you know what would be even worse than just having an army-wide 5-up deny, an army-wide 5-up deny, and -2 to cast. So I did a Calexis, just in case we ever end up in a meta where casters are a nightmare. This was fun. I was not able to get the purple into this, but I did get some of the green in. I really enjoyed doing this, and it kind of shows because I also did a Vindicare. And this is probably the best example I have of adding the appropriate army colours in without kind of massively breaking the actual model. So what I did here was I just added the purple round the gun, and then the green, and also on the flag at the back, I used a Zephyrin pennant to just basically make it, give me a reason to have purple on there. Gives you something to hide behind as well, but also used it in in some of the kind of wires feeding into the visor. This was incredibly good fun to paint. I absolutely loved doing it. I think the model is gorgeous. I certainly didn't do it justice, but it was great fun, and I highly recommend just doing it for the pure enjoyment of using of painting the model. I believe we've got one of these. So I have done the Battle Sanctum, and you will see here's the statue that goes with it. The Battle Sanctum's in the back of some of the videos, and this was just the statue that goes with it. I did some work to make it more statue, where I added various basing materials, some of the crackle paste and some of the kind of the grainy sand ones. I can't remember what they're called. I think it's like Armageddon dust and a Grelin earth, maybe. And I added those before I painted, because it just gives it a kind of a rougher stone effect. And then and then I added candles around the base to kind of tie it in. And I obviously did the brazier in kind of my army glow, and then OSL round it. This was done at the time where I was like, I've got an airbrush, I can do this, and it looks great with minimal effort. The little character on the right is my just utility preacher, priest, whatever kind of stand-in character I want. Really simple, just a plain 3D printed model that I just wanted to have something really straightforward. I wanted to turn it round in case, again, this was for tournament prep. I did this when Abaddon came out and CSM, with the thought that if Abaddon was everywhere, as he is, I could add is it a preacher? I think it's a preacher into my list to then auto cant the smite to do flat 3 mortal wounds, because Abaddon is chaos. And that takes another phase out. Then I do a phase of shooting and a phase of combat, and that means I can kill Abaddon in a turn. So this was a very quick turnaround because I just wanted something very straightforward. And I just, like, a lot of what I work on for Sisters is where they are as a tournament army, and what I need to do to make that. The next things I want to add that I'm working on and working through in my head is penitent engines and how I turn those into Nighthaunt-esque things. Which will, and I hate saying this because I absolutely despise the model, it will probably involve Spirit Host, and my word, that will be awful. But now, I believe we're going to come on to, because I don't remember my slides. Oh, I can see them over there. Yeah, we definitely are coming on to it. A lot of people always ask me, they're always like, your army looks incredible, blah, 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 I love it. And the first thing I always say to them is, well, thank you very much, I really appreciate it, I think it looks terrible, but hey, everyone's their own biggest critic. But you should see my triumph. And I wanted to put this out and put a lot of effort into this. And for me, it is a triumph, but this is my treason of St. Catherine. And this was about 60 to 100 hours of work, if not more, mostly from a modeling perspective, not from a painting perspective. So, a lot of things going on here. Firstly, it is a Grey Knight Nemesis Dread Knight as the base. The scythe is 3D printed. Then you have the casket from the Triumph that is now vertical and being projected forwards, with the corpse now rather than the cherubs carrying it, they are now chaining the corpse in. And then you have the 6 relic bearers, each of which is a different Nighthaunt model that I had to convert to hold each of the individual relics from the original Sisters models. And then you have the Triumph base and so on. And this was kind of, and then there's loads of other bits. So you'll see it's got Paragon missile racks on there. It's got various kind of other paraphernalia. So you'll see on a lot of the joints, it has Sororita symbols or roses or other associated symbols. On a lot of the armor bits, when we go and look around the back, it has some of the gold leaf etchings that come from the various Rhino kits, I think. And yeah, this was a lot of work. And so if we move on to the next slide, so this is kind of, these are close-ups of the front. The champion at the front is what are they called? They're one of the champion models from Nighthaunt, and he normally doesn't carry a shield, but the way his hand is down at the front, I was like, that's perfect because I can hide whatever mess goes behind the shield, and then he can have a shield and the big sword that kind of goes with that. Oh, one of the really cool things that I haven't used because I never really used this model in games, I've used it once, is every single one of these Nighthaunt is magnetized, and I can pull them off to represent which relics are and are not active for the buffs the Triumph gives out. So just a really, really cool little feature here. One of the hardest things that I had to do in this was what would, because obviously the casket normally is flat. How am I going to make that look? How am I going to change something that's meant to be flat to look what it looks like vertically? And that's why I had to do the things where I chain in the corpse to kind of make it look like, right, okay, this is chained in place so that it can't fall. It's why I added the parchment to fall down, because then it kind of gives you the idea of, right, this is meant to be vertical now and stuff like that. And why I added, why I moved various symbols to kind of place it the way it is. So then just to zoom in a bit, this kind of, as I say, I'm bad at painting, and you can really see how bad I am at painting when you zoom in this close. Painting the casket, absolute nightmare. Trying to paint that corpse is horrendous. But I did my best, and basically I just tried to move everything round. You'll see the book at the top. The book at the top hides various problems behind it. Again, my standard modeling technique is to just hide the things that look awful. I added, you'll see also at the front, I added a couple of things falling down on each side, which is purity seals or more parchment, to again just give the verticality of it. Then we move into kind of a side shot, and you can see one of the relic bearers much closer up here, and obviously the 2 relic bearers flying around the top. So the one at the front with the shield, that was an easy one to do. This one was this one was not the worst, but was still hard. So what I did with this one was I had to cut off the two scrolls on the belt, and I was like, right, I can do that fine. But then I had to adjust the brazier or whatever it is that's being held there, the essence, and make sure that was held in the appropriate place. And yeah, again, really challenging thing to do, but works out. And then also the icon, I can't remember what it is, that involved a hand swap. And let me tell you, hand swaps on Nighthaunt models are horrendous because their wrists are teeny tiny, and Sister's power armor hands are pretty challenging. So I had to basically go off at the glove on Sisters, and then do this tiny little tiny little bridge between those two areas, which was nightmarish. Then we get on to the Cairn Wraith. I believe that's the name of the character on the back. So this Nighthaunt is normally carrying a scythe, and I was like, well, that's the best place to put the banner. Is that the Argent Shroud? I think that might be the Argent Shroud. I don't know my lore that well. I apologize to every Sisters player out there. But no, the Argent Shroud is something else. What is this? Maybe it is. Can't remember. But yeah, this was relatively easy, except for the fact that I had to essentially construct a bit along the back to hide the messy join between the scythe head and where the top of that and where the top of the banner is. It was pretty rough to do that, but at the same point, it's come out okay now, and you can't see the mess. It's at the back. You'll also see from this shot where I put some of the gilded leaf on the power pack of the Dread Knight, and how it's also got the Inquisitor symbol at the top, and around the base of the Triumph, which is the actual base from the Triumph. I'd kind of put candles along the walkways in like a weird summoning kind of circle idea. I don't know. It just felt appropriate to have loads of candles on it to kind of light the pathways. How that Dread Knight got there without walking on them, I don't know, but it looks cool, and that's important. Then as we go round, you can see now that there's the two Nighthaunt that are each magnetized onto the Dread Knight's shoulders. And these are, again, these involved hand swaps for the petals and for the chalice. I didn't know how I wanted to do these. So again, this is a color issue. I didn't want everything to be green because then it'd all just blend together. And I wanted the relics to actually stand out as being something different. And so I made a decision that I still don't know whether I'm happy with, to paint the rose petals pink and to put actual fire on actual fire colors of red, orange, yellow on the two flame, the brazier and the, I can't remember what it's called, the essence shaking thing. Who knows? Someone will know better than me. Leave it in the comments. You know stuff like that. But this is how. So I added those colors, and I wasn't massively keen on them. But at the same point, I wanted something different because otherwise it would all just blend together in one mess. And so I took a chance. It's all right. You'll also notice here that I haven't said before. The Dread Knight actually has a robe or a kind of a tabard attached to the front and back over the groin, which just kind of adds yet more purple into it, because otherwise I was worried that the actual Dread Knight itself wouldn't look sistery. So I wanted to add more things that kind of made it look like it was a sister's repurposing. So then this is just a shot from above, so you can see the magnetization of the two Nighthaunt there, and it just shows you that kind of top-down perspective, how massive this model really is. Then we go round to the side. This is a close-up of the Valorous Heart staff, and you can see again this character added the head, or added the kind of head decoration on, as well as painting the Valorous Heart staff red. This model and the two at the top come from Mirmorn Banshees from in fact the four non-Cairn Wraith, non-front guy are all the Mirmorn Banshees models, because they all fly around in messy things, and I had to disconnect them from their bases because they're all kind of attached and flying around gravestones. So I had to sand all that off. That's why some of them look very rough, and then add bits on to kind of cover that up. That sword is probably covering a bad joint, and various things like that. This was another hand swap. As you'll see, there is a Battle Sister hand carrying the staff, but then a ghostly Nighthaunt arm outside the other way. And that's kind of the whole army. That's everything I've done for the Adepta Sororitas so far. And this is kind of an overview picture. So I hope you've liked this kind of talk through of it, just to show you the full army in all its kind of detail, talk you through the history, why I did this. And what I've done next, this is going to take a bit to sort out, is there's just a video that kind of guides you through every single model that I've got for this army. So we'll do that, and then we'll just recap again at the end. So I'll just play that now. And hopefully it plays. Okay. Why is that? Right, we are losing. So let's just do it the old-fashioned way, eh? See, it's just PowerPoint. I play and do. Oh, nope, wrong one. Does this just play? There we go. Play? No. Well, that's not good. That's very not good. Recover unsaved file. Please say you're still on here. If I do this. So can I full screen mode? Right, so this gives you a better look across the army. Sorry about this. But yeah, this is kind of every single model I have that's sisters worthy, or that's sisters or usable in sisters, matching my color scheme and everything like that. You can see the Battle Sanctum in the background, and this is kind of what you see on a tabletop. Obviously the glam cams and the other photos are just zoomed in so you can see every single mistake there is, and this is very much just what my army looks like when it's in play, and that's what I care about when I paint an army. Here you'll see all my Retributors, and there are a lot of Retributors. The second squad of Zephyrim that I mentioned with the blood on the bases, extra Rhinos, second Novitiate squad, there's 30 Battle Sisters back there, one of my Canonesses. We go down into shots of Val and the Sacrosancts onto the Triumph, Treason, whatever way you want to put it. And it just basically goes through everything. And I just wanted to include this at the end so that people could see the tabletop ready army. I'll probably put this up as a very quick, you could just literally watch this video and that's all you need to watch. And again, you can see the whole Battle Sanctum that's been affectionately called the Haunted House. I do want to add some kind of curtains and drapes to add purple into it, and then just a selection of characters on the top. I I put the Vindicare Assassin right on top of the Battle Sanctum because someone really wanted a photo of that, so I wanted to make sure it was included there on the video. So yeah, that is the whole of the Spooky Sisters. That is every part of the army. You've seen all the models, everything like that. I am sorry that I didn't get the PowerPoint working correctly, but I mean, that's technology for you, isn't it? So anyway, yeah, that's the whole army, and I just wanted to make sure it was out there and shared so that people could enjoy it, see it, and basically just see the effort I've put into an army I love, a faction I adore. And I say this wholeheartedly, I would not have done it or been able to get through all of this and finish an army like this without the Tabletop Titans Discord and the people there. They made a huge impact to my life. They allowed me to express myself and what I was going through creativity and share enjoyment with them and so on. And it's why I will always make reference to it as one of the best communities I've ever been a part of. And I will continually, I will rant and rave about how good it is and how much it's helped me through the years. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate this video has gone on quite a long time, but hopefully you've enjoyed bits of it, enjoyed what you've seen, etc. If you ever see me at a tournament, if you ever see the Spooky Sisters anywhere, please do come and say hi. It's really appreciated. And hearing people talk so highly of them keeps me wanting to do it and keeps me wanting to do more and so on. And that really is it. That is kind of that is everything to do with it. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. I really appreciate it. If you do like things, if you want to see more, please tell me about it. Tell me what videos you'd like to see. Tell me what topics you'd like to cover. I know people have wanted me to talk about less used models and various other aspects of it. Let me know in the comments. Do subscribe. I hate saying it, but it lets me know to keep making these videos and things like that. So that's where we are. Thank you very much, and I will see you in the next video on. Thank you.